When I was in the House and we had these discussions on the law we're looking at altering, it was baffling to me how controversial this idea is that we restrict the bureaucrats of this state from going forward implementing rules without having a legislative discussion. And by putting this safeguard in place that says they can't do that if they're going to go beyond the restrictions that the federal government already puts in place, while we still allow for emergency rules to be promulgated, which have extensive amounts of time and can be reissued, I don't understand why we even bother being here. If we are going to delegate away our authority as the people's elected representatives to a bunch of bureaucrats who are sometimes very good people, but are also sometimes driven by agendas that led them into that particular profession, agendas that are not in the best interests of our constituencies, are not in the best interests of the economics of this state, are not even in the best interests of the environmental policies of this state. If we're just going to give that away, why do we even run for office? Why is it that as a member of this legislature who goes out and puts up signs, walks in parades, knocks on thousands of doors, speaks to tens of thousands of people, makes calls, puts my name on the line, that I'm going to allow some guy or lady who gets hired by some department and has protections against being removed from that job, why are we just letting them set up sorts of rules that we've never discussed? Why do we even put in our bills in the first place that we're just going to let them make these rules? We have people in these departments who are literally telling our citizens that they can only build a garage that fits one snowmobile and not two because of some cattails that some bureaucrat has created a policy on that dictates 2 snowmobiles is more than you need. That garage is too big because it knocks over too many cattails. That's not the legislature. We didn't discuss that. And we were sent here to discuss those things. And now we just let a bureaucrat run away with that. The legislature meets as the voice of the people. That is why we are a government of, for, and by the people. And this bureaucratic state that's been created at both the federal level and the state level is anathema to a government that's of, for, and by the people. It's not the intention of our Constitution or our founders. It's certainly not the vision they had, and we continually see the disaster that it creates. When I was invited to the White House in 2019 to see some executive orders signed, the executive orders were being signed specifically because of the bureaucracy and what it was doing in enforcing rules they had put in place that had expired. They're literally enforcing rules that had expired decades earlier. And we passed good laws here to make sure that our bureaucracy is at least hemmed in, that they can't go off willy-nilly, that you and I, as members who are elected by our citizens and have to go in front of them repeatedly for their support and hear their complaints, don't have to give them an answer that says, well, sorry, some bureaucrat wrote that and there's nothing I can do about it. That rule that they're there, well, they can just go forward and do that. The people look to us to write their laws. They look to us to do the job, not to just give it away to bureaucrats, not to just give it away to agencies of people who face no consequences for their decisions and very notably can be lobbied with no hindrance whatsoever. You and I, we get invited to a dinner, somebody reports on that. Somebody gives us money for our campaigns, that gets reported. Somebody over in the departments They can go out to dinner with somebody from any group, from whether it's from Farm Bureau or Sierra Club, from one of the unions, from the Chamber of Commerce. Those dinners don't get reported. And the bureaucrats get lobbied harder than we do, with no disclosure, no transparency, and a far greater impact on the citizenry of this state. What's wrong with what we passed? Why are we doing this today? There's the emergency provisions are there, very clearly laying out a process in case an environmental disaster or another disaster is happening. This governor has used those powers extensively, whether it's on the vaping or cigarettes. The process worked. You got what you wanted. Eventually, the legislature even came and ratified those things. When the green ooze happened in southeast Michigan, emergency action was taken. They weren't hindered by this law. When flooding happens, emergencies are declared. Environmental cleanup proceeds. This is much ado about nothing, this law that we passed several years ago, and now to wipe it away is to just continually reinforce the bureaucratic state. It's there to reinforce them taking over our lives. A couple years ago, some citizens in my district installed a septic system in their yard. All legit. They did the mounding, they did everything they were supposed to do according to the local bureaucrat, and then a state bureaucrat said, nope, sorry, too close to the house, or it infringed on this little depression here where supposedly was a wetland, depression the size of 2 desks. And suddenly, oh, you've got to tear all that out. And we went through all the process with them. Finally, the department said, okay, well, we'll issue an after-the-fact permit. But they also have to pay a fine. Okay, well, what's the size of the fine? It was like $20,000. And when asked about, well, where's in the rule book it says that this should be this size or that size, the answer from the department was, well, this is their second home, so they can afford to pay that. Is that the world we want to live in, where bureaucrats are literally determining the size of the fine on the ability to pay for our citizens? And you just presume that because, well, they have a cottage in the woods in the Upper Peninsula, they must have a lot of cash. So let's soak them for it. This is terrible. This is terrible that we're empowering the bureaucracy that way and disempowering us. The legislature should be the preeminent branch of the people. It is the people's opportunity to speak to their needs. It is the people's opportunity to say, we want this policy in place because it's best for us, it's best for our state. And we're abandoning that away to the bureaucratic state here by simply saying, go and write whatever you want. No strictures whatsoever. If we, the legislature, really get up our dander about it, and we have the power, and we have the governor's office, then we'll stop you. But otherwise, it's open season, bureaucrats. Start doing your job. Start writing new rules, making it hard for the people. Let's go after the sugar beet guys and call the dirt they knocked off of their sugar beets industrial waste again. That's what we had before this was in place. Seriously. The dirt off of the sugar beets is industrial waste because, well, you took the sugar beets into the factory and you shook the dirt off. That's industrial waste. That water over there that was coming out off of the roof, well, now you've caught it in a basin and you send it in a culvert. Now it's point source. That's what we're allowing to come back again. It's bad for Michigan because the bureaucracy here has no term limits. They have no transparency, and they have no accountability. They don't get up and run for election, and that's what since we passed this law 10 years ago, I've been able to say to bureaucrats when they come and, well, we really think we should do this. This would be so much better. We want to take out this dam. Your people, I literally had a bureaucrat tell me, your people don't understand how much better it'll be once we take this dam out, even though the whole community wants that dam to stay there. Even though that community is raising money to make sure that dam can stay there, some bureaucrat says they don't understand how much better it'll be once we get rid of it. Well, it's none of their business. This is the community's choice, not a bureaucrat's choice. And now, well, the bureaucrats will have the reign of the day. So say goodbye to your dam community. Say hello to toxic waste dirt knocked off of sugar beets farmers. Say hello to $20,000 fines, retired folks, because you got a second home, shack in the UP. I got a guy up in Eagle Harbor that I've just been visiting who's in a line of people along the shoreline. Everybody's got a culvert to drain the water because of the spring thaw that comes and washes the dirt into their basements, except for his home. He put a culvert in. They're after him. He's just gotten sued a couple of days ago. They're not suing any of the other homeowners. It's all the same water, same dirt, same shore, but because the sheriff installed those four and not his, he can't get it done. Can't even get an after-the-fact permit. We'd rather see his house washed into the lake because he doesn't have the power the folks in Muskegon Heights and other places did a few years ago when their homes were falling into Lake Michigan. This is just a guy in the UP, so too bad for him. That's the power of bureaucracy. And that's what this bill does today, is empower this bureaucracy unnecessarily. Where's the disaster over the last 10 years since we implemented this law? Where's the evidence that somehow we weren't able to quickly respond to disasters? Where's the evidence that we're not reacting either from the legislative body or giving the power to the bureaucrats in an emergency? There's no evidence that we haven't been able to do that, because we have. The demonstration is clear. So just as clear as what was happening before we passed this law, when the bureaucracy had no checks, had no restraint, had no accountability, and now we're going right back to it again. I encourage members to reconsider. Please vote no on this. Keep the power in the legislature. Give us something to do. Make it important to be here. Make it so we can tell our constituents when we go home that we are working for them and we can work for them, because some guy in some cubicle somewhere isn't making all the decisions that then we can't do anything about. Thank you, Mr. President. I don't need my remarks printed in the Journal.